A few days ago, the price of diesel came down by about 3 rupees a litre and petrol by 5, and I noticed something strange about my own reaction. I felt almost nothing. 3 rupees sounds like a rounding error, the kind of change you would not cross the road to save. And yet I have watched that same small number moving the other way quietly rearrange the price of dinner. So I went looking for how a number that small touches a life that much. Now, let me tell you where I stand, because this ends with an opinion. I think we have been taught to read fuel as a driver's problem, a line item for people who own cars and trucks. But I think that is quietly, importantly, wrong. Fuel is not one price among many. It is the price hidden inside almost every other price. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. Because the stakes are not really about your petrol tank. When fuel moved sharply a couple of years ago, the thing people felt was not the pump. It was the vegetable seller, the auto fare, the tiffin service, the courier, all nudging upward at once for reasons nobody at the dinner table could quite name. The fuel bill arrived in disguise. And if you ask most people what sets the price of a tomato, they will say the farmer, the weather, the season. All true. But you know what? There is another number sitting inside that tomato that nobody ever mentions. The distance it traveled to reach you, and the diesel it burned on the way. So here is what we are going to do. First, why fuel is not a cost you pay, but a cost baked into everything you buy. Then, how a 3 rupee change at the pump becomes a rupee on your plate. And finally, the big one, why this quiet little number lands hardest on exactly the people with the least room to absorb it. Fundamentals first. Almost nothing you own was made where you bought it. The rice, the onions, the cooking gas, the phone, the medicine, each one traveled, often for hundreds of kilometers, on a truck. And in India, by most estimates, close to 2/3 of all freight moves by road. Road means diesel. So diesel is not really a fuel. It is the current that the whole physical economy runs on. Let me translate that. When you buy a tomato, you are not only paying the farmer. You are paying, in tiny slivers, for every liter of diesel it took to move that tomato from a field to a mandi to a truck to a cart to your hand. You never see that line on any bill. But it is always there, folded quietly into the final number. So now picture the diesel price moving up by just 3 rupees. On one truck, on one trip, that is almost nothing. But that truck is carrying tons of onions, and it makes that trip again and again. And behind it is a second truck and a third and a whole country of trucks, all paying the same few rupees more on every kilometer, on everything. See, this is how a tiny number becomes a large one, not by being big, but by being multiplied. 3 rupees times millions of liters, times millions of trips, times nearly everything that moves. The change at the pump is small. The change to the economy is the same small number, run through a multiplying machine the size of a subcontinent. And here is the part that genuinely gets to me. When fuel rises, the prices of 100 small things rise with it, quickly and together. But when fuel falls, as it just did, those same prices come down slowly, reluctantly, if they come down at all. The auto driver raises the fare, the wheat diesel climbs. He does not lower it, the wheat diesel dips. The ratchet only turns one way. Now, to be fair to the other side, this is not simple greed, and it is not a conspiracy. A small trader lives on thin, uncertain margins, and when his costs jump, he passes them on to survive. When his costs fall, he holds the gain for a while, because he remembers the last time they rose, and he is bracing for the next. This stickiness is not villainy. It is a small businessman with no buffer of his own, behaving exactly as fear teaches. So the fuel price is really two different events, wearing one name. On the way up, it is a fast tax. On the way down, it is a slow, uncertain refund. And the household in the middle pays the fast part in full and collects the slow part in fractions. And there is genuine relief worth naming, honestly. This month, the pump price actually fell, and for a household running close to the edge, even a small drop in transport and cooking costs is real and welcome. Fuel taxes in India also fund a great deal of road and public spending. So the price is not simply a burden, it is also partly how the roads themselves get built. However, and it is a large however, the relief at the pump is quiet and slow, while the pain, when it comes is loud and immediate. Which brings us to the big one, and the reason the small number matters more than it looks. Who actually feels it? Not, mostly, the person with a car. It is the household that spends the largest share of its money on exactly two things: food and travel. And that household is the poorest one. See, a wealthy family spends a small slice of its income on tomatoes and bus fares and barely notices when that slice thickens. A poor family spends a huge share of everything it earns on food and on getting to work. So when the price inside food and travel quietly rises, it takes a small bite from the rich and a deep one from the poor. The same 3 rupees, a very different wound. This is what economists call a regressive cost, and it is the quietest kind of unfairness there is, because it never announces itself. Nobody votes for it, no notice is served. It arrives folded inside a tomato, and it asks the least of those who have the most, and the most of those who have the least. Now, to reframe it, because the problem is not the price of fuel itself. Fuel will always cost something, and someone will always have to pay to move a tomato. The real problem is that we treat fuel as an energy story, a matter for oil markets and pumps, when for the household it is a food story, and a fairness story, and a story about who has any room to absorb a shock and who has none. And the fixes, quietly, already exist. Cheap, reliable public transport takes the fuel cost out of a poor family's daily travel entirely. Efficient railways move freight at a fraction of the diesel. A truck burns, and every ton shifted from road to rail is a little less fuel hidden inside your food. None of this is exotic. It is the ordinary, unglamorous work of making the current that runs the economy cost a little less to carry. So the next time the pump price moves and the news treats it as a story about drivers, I hope you will see the fuller picture. A single small number multiplied across everything that moves, arriving late as relief and early as pain, and landing softest on those who can afford it and hardest on those who cannot. They say the price of oil is set in distant places, in markets most of us will never see, perhaps. But the price of a tomato is set much closer to home, on the road just outside it. And the least we can do is stop pretending that the number on the pump and the number on our plate were ever really two different things.